routines, but that dude is so superstitious. If we win with long socks, guess what? The next week they're going to be even longer. So he does not want you to change anything. So my dad's like, you really need to go talk to him. So the next day we have our walkthrough, and I was like, hey coach, can I talk to you for a second? He's like, yeah, how you feeling? Your arm ready? Your legs ready? You got the game plan down? I was like, yeah, I'm good. But you know the verse I wear under my eyes? He's like, yeah, Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I was like, yep, well, I'm going to change that verse to John 3:16 tomorrow night. He's like, what? What are you talking about? You can't change the verse. Philippians 4:13 got us here. You can't change it now. And I was like, no, coach, it didn't get us here. And after a couple of minutes of talking to him, he totally understood. And really, that was the last time I thought about it. I just put John 3:16 under my eyes, and we were blessed to go out there and play for the national championship and win. And 2 days after the game, I was in Ballyhoo restaurant with my mom, my dad, one of my aunts, and Coach Meyer. And Coach Meyer gets a call, and he's talking to our PR guy, and he's like, all right, bye, just so intense. And I was like, Coach, what was that about? He said, PR guy just told me that 94 million people Googled John 3:16 during the game. And at first, my first thought was, how the heck do 94 million people not know John 3:16? But then I started to think, wow, this God that we serve is a really big God. And I just, sitting in that chair, I remember thinking, wow, I feel so small. The God that we serve is so big. He's so much bigger than all of us, but he always has a plan and a purpose for everything. You know what was really cool about that game is it was on January 8th of 2009. Exactly 3 years later, on January 8th, 2012, we just happened to be playing the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round of the playoffs. I didn't think of John 3:16 one time, so I can't take credit for it. I had nothing to do with it. I just tried to go out there and do anything that I could to win a playoff game, and we were blessed to win that game in overtime. And after we were done celebrating, I rushed into the locker room and I changed really fast. So I'm getting ready to walk into the press conference, and Patrick, our PR guy, he stands in front of me. He says, Timmy, wait, did you realize what happened? I could tell something had happened. I said, Patrick, what's up? So he told me about the date being exactly 3 years from when I wore John 3:16 under my eyes. And I said, wow, that's awesome. That's really cool. He said, no, you don't realize. During the game, you threw for 316 yards. Your yards per rush were 3.16. Your yards per completion were 31.6. The ratings for the night were 31.6. And the time of possession was 31.6. And during the game, 90 million people Googled John 3:16. And it was the #1 trending thing on Facebook and Twitter and all of that. And I was just standing there right in front of the press conference room thinking, God, I didn't even know you were doing anything. I just felt so small. But at the same time, God, you're just so awesome. You used something that I did 3.5 years ago to put Philippians 4:13 in my eyes and then switch it to John 3:16, and then you used that, but you didn't stop. I thought it was done. I thought it was over. But God, you were working and I didn't even know. But guys, we serve a big God, and he can take us average, ordinary people who mess up all the time. I know I do. And he can do awesome things with us and through us. My junior year at the University of Florida, we were getting ready to play a...
Isn't that awesome, though? Y'all remember that? 94 million people Googled during the game John 3:16. And then 3 years later, another 90 million people cheered during the professional football game. And it just, the #1 feed on Twitter and Facebook. And I love his last quote. I love this quote he gave us at the end. He says, how about our sound booth people? Get me back in line here. I feel so much more secure when this, thank you. He can take average and ordinary people who mess up all the time and do amazing things with us and through us. And that's so, so true. And I add to that, if we use our platforms, So what I want to do for the rest of our time together today is I want to talk about 5 points about how we can use our platforms to honor God. Number one is we need to be aware of our platforms and be intentional to use them. Tim Tebow saw his players using iBlack to put their mom's name on it. And he immediately thinks, how can I use iBlack to honor God? He was very intentional. And we need to train ourselves to be like Tim Tebow. We need to think like that. We need to be thinking about how we can use our platforms because like Ezra, we are priests, and we have platforms that can point people to God. And when I say like that we're priests, if we could advance that slide to the 1 Peter verse. Yeah, so this is a familiar verse, but it's a good reminder for us. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness and into his wonderful light. It's, Pastor Renee and Dallas aren't here today, but we're priests. I mean, we're a priest. We are here to back in the Old Testament, we needed a priest to get to God. We don't need a priest. We are priests. We got direct access to God. And we need to think that way. We need to be intentional like Tim Tebow was. So what platforms do I have, you might ask? Well, do you have small children? You have a platform, right? Do you have adult children? I have a 35-year-old daughter. That's a platform. That's a different platform than when she was 8 years old, but it's a platform. Do you have a job? That's a platform. Do you have friends? Do you ever coach a soccer team? Do you have a elderly parent that's alive, maybe getting older, or grandparent? I see a lot of young people here. Do you have a grandparent that's alive? You know how you can use your platform? You can use your platform when you leave church today, and you can call your parent or your grandparent and just tell them that you were thinking about them and that you're so glad they're in your life and you love them, and I just wanted to let you know I was thinking of you. You just use your platform to honor your mother and your father or your grandmother and your grandfather, which is pleasing to God. We have so many platforms. They're unlimited, the number of platforms. And I want to give you a couple examples. I want to tell you about one I did as a parent that I think was good. I want to put a little disclaimer right up front. There's many things I would like to do over as a parent. Does anybody relate to that? I would like to put more emphasis on some things than others. There's so much I could have done differently. But I do want to talk about one thing I think I did well. Just one little thing. And that was our bedtime routine with my kids when they were little. I was very intentional that I wanted to be the one to put them to bed when they were little. And I would take my son first, and I put him to bed, and we lay in bed together, and we talk about whatever's going on today, whatever he's doing. Then I'd have a little, if you could, the little Visits with God book, just the first hit on that. But then I would read a book. This was my grandparents gave me that book in 1969 when I was 10 years old, and it's got little devotionals in it, and I would read a little devotion with them every single night, and then I would pray with them. And then I'd leave my son, and I'd go to my daughter, and I'd do the same thing with my daughter. And I think it was impactful, and I think it was enjoyable. It was a very pleasant thing for us. But my daughter, being 3 years older, outgrew that sooner, right? That's not cool at 18, right? That's not what you do. And so she outgrew it, and I still had another 3 years with my son. So my son, I'm guessing, it's been so long, I'm guessing I did this 6 to 7 years with him, and with my daughter 3 to 4 years, and then she outgrew it. And so we were going through this book, we were going through it over and over and over, and it was really cool. And one day he said to me, Dad, when I have children, can I have this book? And read it to my kids. So I said, that would please me very much, and you can have it. Well, in 2014, when he's 21 years old, he passed away. He died. And so we were in his room, and we were going through things and always looking for things like T-shirts and stuff. And in his books, I ran across this book on his bookshelf. And it had this cover on it, which I'd never seen before. No other books had a cover on it. And it fits perfectly. I don't know where it came from. And so I'm like, what is this book? And of course, you know what it is. But, so I pull it off, and there it is. It's a little bit of God, And but push it one more time, the slide, yeah. And so, but inside, I open the thing up. And first, you'll see that up top it says to Tobin from Nani and Da. Sorry, that's my grandparents. July 5th, 1969. That was my birthday. And so then he wrote. This cracks me up. He wrote underneath that in his writing, to Toby from Tobin. And what really touches my heart about this is is I could tell that this was important to him too. Because number one, he's protecting it, right? And number two, he's claiming it, you know? And let me tell you what happened yesterday. This is really weird, but yesterday I was preparing for this a little bit, and I was flipping through the book, and I found a piece of paper in there I didn't even know was in there. And in that paper was a drawing of some trees, some birds in the tree, and on the back of it is where I shared the gospel with him, and where God's sin separates us and crosses in the middle, and all that, and he had saved that in his book. And so anyway, what a blessing I had yesterday. But anyway, my point is this is one thing I was very intentional about as a dad. It's the bedtime routine. And is to use my platform as a father. I wanted them to every night to say, my dad talked to me about God, prayed with me about God. Let me share with you another example of using your platforms and being intentional. In May of this year, my wife and I were on vacation in Florida. My wife is, she's here today, Pat. That's my wife, Pat. We've been married 38 years this August, very happily married. Pat has some health issues, and she has a number of things. One of the more visible, she has immune deficiency and other things, but one of the more visible problems is she has a headache every day. That's why she had to come in after the music. She can't, music will just totally, send her head off. So anyway, so we're down in Florida in May, and she gets a colon infection. And so we're in the hospital in Fort Myers, Florida. Don't know anybody there. And for 3 days in the hospital with IV antibiotics, 2 times IV antibiotics. They come to us and they say, okay, you can go, you need 2 more days, but if you want to go home, we have a program where we'll leave your IV in, we'll send a home health care nurse to see you and administer the medicines, and you can go home to where, and we said, count us in, we're doing that. So we go home, and this nurse, there she is, Adriana, she comes, and on our 3rd visit, she's the most lovely, we just loved her. And so we started talking with her on her 3rd visit and found out that her husband's a pastor. And so we said, well, we're Christians too. And so we got in this real spiritual conversation. Then she prayed for us. And Pat, I don't know if you remember that prayer, but it was, so you have some people just feel like they got a direct line to God. I mean, they just have the words. And it was just so powerful, and it was so appreciated. But then she said something. This is the point of the story. Then she said something I'll never forget. She said, when I come into, all she does is home health care and to repeat people, repeat visits. And she says, when I go into one of my customers, clients, patients, whatever, she says, I want them to like me. I do everything I can for them to like me. She said, because if they like me, they'll ask me about my family. And if they ask about my family, I get to tell them I'm married to a pastor. And then that opens up spiritual conversation. This was her quote. And then I can do ministry. Now, do you see how intentional she is with her platform at work? I want them to like me, so they'll ask about my family, so I can tell them I'm married to a pastor, and so I can do ministry. And I said, wow. And I said, I got to get a picture with you because I'm working on a sermon, and you're going to be in it. But when I think about her being so intentional, this is a great verse. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity. And that's what Tim Tebow did. That's what Adriana did. And so point number 1 is we need to be aware of and intentional about our platforms. Okay, point number 2, the size of people's platforms will vary, and that's okay. When I first watched a Tim Tebow tape, anybody have this thought, well, that's great for Tim Tebow. I'm not a Heisman Trophy winner. I don't have that kind of platform. That's a cool story, Tobin, but I don't know it's really applicable to me. That's stinking thinking. Let me tell you, we will have different size platforms, and that's okay. My favorite parable is the parable of the talents, and I'm going to walk through this pretty quick. But so in this parable, the master, God, He gives some talents of money to his servants. He gives to one 5 talents of money, to one 2 talents of money, to one 1 talents of money, each according to his ability. So right off the bat, we just need to know, we know this already, but some of us are going to have bigger platforms. Some of us are going to have better looks. Some of us are going to have more hair, okay? Some of us are going to be more athletic. Some of you are going to look like this, okay? Some of you are going to have more money. Some of you are going to have better health. Some of you are going to have more influence. Some of you have more musical talent. We're going to be given different gifts, different talents, different levels, different platforms. But let's watch what happens. So he goes off, and he's going to come back. The person with 5 talents gets 5 more. The person with 2 talents gets 2 more. And the one with 1 talent buries it because he doesn't want to lose his master's money. Because he's a hard master. I don't want him mad at me. So the master comes back, and he comes up to the guy with 5 talents. And he goes, look, I have 5, and I got 5 more. And you know what his response was? Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. I mean, high five. That's what you want to hear, right? Guy with 2 talents comes, and he's got 2. Now, he doesn't have 7. He doesn't have what Tim Tebow over there got, right? He's got 2, and he got 2 more. What's he going to say about me? Is he going to go, okay, you did okay. All right, I'm happy. That's not what he said. What did he say? Well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The exact same thing. All we have to do, and this is very important, this is one of the most important messages, I think, for all believers, is all we have to do is be faithful with what we've been given. That's all we got to do is be faithful with what we've been given. I think about my wife with poor health. I've had up to now really blessed health. You know what? Her poor health limits what she can, some of her platforms, and she doesn't get out as much. She can't do it. She can't volunteer as much. She can't. But you know what? All she has to do is be faithful with what she's been given, and we all can hear the well done, my good and faithful servant. So the point is there will be different size platforms, and that's okay. Point number 3. Let's go to the next one here. Platforms can come from painful experiences. Okay. So Apostle Paul is a great example of that. So, when Paul wrote the Philippians, he is in his 4th year of imprisonment. Did you know that? 4th year. And he's waiting around for Emperor Nero's final opinion on the case. But think about, put yourself in Paul's place. So God had come to him and said, Paul, you're my man. You're my chosen instrument. You're going to take the gospel to the Gentiles. And Paul's going, yep, all right, I'm your man. Let's do it. And now you're in prison for 4 years. Now, he had some time before that, but he's in prison for 4 years. How would you respond if you're Paul? Kind of like, God, you just left me here. I quit. I'm done. I mean, I could see myself getting there. 4 years? Well, that's not what he did. Let's take a look at the scripture in Philippians. So it says, now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. As a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I'm in chains for Christ. And because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. He's literally changed the guards from shifts. Hey, did I tell you about Jesus? You told me about Jesus, Paul. I bet they're so tired of hearing about Jesus. What about you? You believe in Jesus? He used his platform. He's a prisoner. He didn't whine. He didn't say, if I was out there, I could do so much. He says, this is the platform I got. I'm gonna influence the whole palace guard, the whole Roman guard. And so painful experiences can create platforms. How would you react if your doctor told you tomorrow that you have a deadly bone marrow cancer with a life expectancy of no more than 3 years? How would that impact your attitude, and how would it impact your faith? Well, that's a real story. This is, I want to, there's a picture of Reed, a man in there, Reed Whitener. Yeah, there he is. He's a co-worker of ours, and this is what happened to him. Let me tell you what he did. He gathered his family together, so we got another picture. He had 3 children and a dog and a wife, and here's what he said. Here's what he said. He told them about his prognosis. It's not a good prognosis. Life expectancy of no more than 3 years. And then he said this word, and this says, listen to this. I want you to watch me because I'm fixing to teach you something. And then he went on to talk about the 3 things that were most important to him. His trust and faith in God, his family, and then the love they had for each other. And he said, I want you to watch me. He said, I'm not going to let the prospect of death affect my attitude, my faith, or anything I stand for in life. I want you to watch me as I battle this illness because I'm going to show you, I'm going to be a living testimony to all the pain, all the chemo, all the hair loss. I want you to watch me because I'm fixing to teach you something. So he used his platform of having cancer to point his family to God, you know? So we just got to remember that sometimes, you know, so if you could put the platforms can come from painful experience again, point number 3. So, you know, have you had a divorce? Have you lost your job? Have you had an addiction? Have you had a wayward child? Have you lost a child? Have you, you know, whatever. Just think that there may well be opportunities in the days ahead where those experiences can be used as a platform to help other people. And so platforms can come from painful experiences. Okay, point number 4. All platforms are temporary. Don't miss them. If we're not being intentional, they're all temporary. We can miss them. So let's look at the verse of James 14. Why are they temporary? Because life is temporary. This is a verse that's it's really a good thought for us to remember. You do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. I always think about a teapot or a coffee pot that's boiling water, and you got that mist that's going up out of the little hole in the top, and then it's gone. That's your life. That's your life. And when you think it compared to eternity, it makes it even more clear. This little thing called life is going to affect our whole eternity. It affects where we're going to spend eternity. We all know that. But it also affects what's going to happen in eternity, our rewards that God talks about often. I don't know exactly what the rewards look like. I don't really care. If they're God's rewards, they're going to be great. But he tells us about them, and he wants us to. He tells us about them because he wants us to obtain them. And so these are temporary platforms that we can use to point others to God. Listen to this. By the time your child is 12 years old, the average parent will have spent 75% of the time they will ever spend with them. Now that's average. Somebody, some will, that may not be true, but by the time child turns 18, you've spent 90% of the time face to face that you'll ever spend with them. Do we realize, parents, how brief and temporary our platform is of being a parent? All right, so I want to tell you a story about that kind of emphasizes the temporary nature of platforms. I mentioned earlier my son's death in 2014. He died on May 22nd, 2014, end of his junior year at college. So many of his friends, some of his friends had grown up in the church and were probably Christians. Some of his friends grew up in the church and probably were not Christians. And some of his friends didn't grow up in the church at all. But the truth of the matter is none of them were really walking closely with God. And I'm not throwing rocks because when I was in college, I wasn't walking closely with God either, okay? But so all of a sudden, though, he dies. And there is a change in the conversations and the thoughts of a lot of young people. Before that, it's about the next football game, the next party. That's kind of what it's all about. And then all of a sudden, this changes. And now there's conversations and there's questions and purpose of life and why do things happen and heaven and hell. And we knew it. And it was a fairly temporary situation, that we could act on or not. If you wait 6 months, we're back to football season again. You with me? And so we were very intentional with the funeral. We had three amazing pastors preach. One was the pastor of Shannon Baptist Church. One was the chaplain of the USC football team. All were good friends of our family and Toby, and he's really good at speaking to young people. One was a guy named Bill Jones, who's the president of Columbia International University, which is a seminary and biblical school. Three different pastors preached three different gospel messages. It was a long sermon and a long funeral. And I really don't think that anybody was really ready to leave. I mean, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, it was good stuff. I mean, they were preaching it. And I talked to kids afterwards, and it was really interesting that some of them said, you know what Dick Lincoln said to me really got me thinking. And then others would say, that illustration that Adrian made, I just can't quit thinking about it. And others would say, Bill Jones is amazing. So God used each of their words. And so there was this continued thoughts and dialogue and questions. And so we were talking with those three pastors after it. And we're like, there's something going on here. We got to get us back together again. And so we're going to have a meeting and have Adrian, the chaplain of the USC football team, who's an evangelist and spoke a lot to young people. We're going to have him come give his signature message. And we're trying, when do we do it? It's June now. It's June of 2014. And we're like, well, a lot of his friends in Carolina are going back home to Winston-Salem and Rock Hill and Atlanta. Maybe we want to wait till September. We can get more of his friends here to have this. And we said, no, if we wait till then, it's gone. The momentum it's football season. And so 2 weeks after we buried him, we had a meeting and had 120 young people there. Had Salsaritas buffet lunch. You got to feed the young people. And he preached his message and several people accepted Christ. But a lot of people, it just stirred more thoughts and more conversations. So one of the other preachers, a guy named Bill Jones, he's the best one-on-one evangelist I've ever seen. So he came and talked to four of the young people. All four had grown up in the church. But after talking with them, all four of them came to the decision that they really weren't Christians. That it was more of a head knowledge than a heart knowledge. And they gave their lives to Christ. And then my friend Bill comes. He says, Toby, we got to get them in a Bible study. I mean, these are brand new Christians. And you can't just drop it. And they may drift. And so we said, okay. And so Pat and I started a Bible study with 5 people, those 4, and one of Toby's other good friends. And we really weren't trying to grow it or anything like that. But it was so comforting to us as grieving parents every week to have those 5, the closest friends. My daughter was one of the 5. And so closest friends of my son and my daughter. We were there to talk about God, but we were there because Toby died. And we all knew that. If Toby hadn't have died, this wouldn't happen. Well, it wasn't long when I had a girl pull me aside and said, hey, I heard about the Bible study. Can I join it? And then another, can I join it? Can I join it? So we went 3 years with the Bible study. We intentionally had an end to it. There's a season for everything. And so we did this for 3 years, from 2014 to 2017. And we had 40 different young people come through the Bible study. Yeah, and one of the things I got to do was I got to buy a study Bible for each of them and put their name engraved on it and write a little note in it. And it was just really, really cool. And a lot of good fruit came out, a lot of good stories. I'll share one with you. He died in 2014. We did the Bible study to 2017. So this is 2019 or 20. And so my good friend sends me a text one July 4th. And so you have a slide of a text there? Yeah, and this is what he sent me. He said, happy 4th. I love you, man. So this is 2019-20. Look what Taylor brought. Taylor is his son, who's one of my son's good friends, brought to the beach and had in his room. It is the Toby ripple effect. And then the next one, he took his Bible. Now, what really touched my heart is this is 27-year-old young man, single young man, who's gone to vacation and taken his Bible. And I don't know what impact the 3-year Bible study had on that, but I do know this: I bought the Bible. Now, I bought the Bible, so but the main point of the story is this: that platform was very temporary, and the window was very short. You know, we had to be very intentional about the funeral. We were going to preach the gospel 3 different ways. And then we were very intentional 2 weeks later to have that meeting where the gospel was preached again. And then we were very intentional to have 4 one-on-one meetings. And then we were very intentional to have a 3-year Bible study. But any hesitation there, and it had been gone. It had been lost. It had been lost. All platforms are temporary. Don't miss them. And then point number 5. Churches thrive when we use our platforms. Up until now, I've talked about nothing but outside the church. And that's intentional, and that's very important. We have to use our platforms with our friends. We have to use our platforms at work. We have to use our platforms with our children at home and everywhere else. But we also got to acknowledge that as a member of a church body, that's a platform. That's a platform. Each one of us have the platform of being associated with the church body. And our churches can only thrive when we use them. And the thing about it that's so cool about it is we all have different talents. You know, some people have some musical talents. I don't. Some people have the gift of hospitality. Some people have the gift of administration and serving, you know. But they're all needed. They're all needed. And so I'm going to read some scriptures in 1 Corinthians. And they're familiar verses, but I'm going to read through them. It really is a beautiful picture of the church. Just as a body, though one, has many parts, but all its many parts form one body. So it is with Christ. So it is with the church. Even so, the body is not made up of one part, but of many. Now, if the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not be for that reason stop being part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, I would not for that reason stop being part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? In fact, I love this, listen to this. In fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body. And then one more. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. You say, well, I'm only doing this. That's all I'm doing. Everything needs to be done. This is a small church, right? And we need a lot of help. And then there's one more verse, I think. Is it verse, let's see, where is it? Verse 27? Yeah. Now you are the body of Christ, and each one of you is a part of it. Okay? So I just want to say thank you to what each of you do every day. Show the picture of the little welcome center. I took this a couple weeks ago, and I'm not going to mention anybody's names, but I just love coming and seeing that. I was talking to Ben and the folks doing that, and I said, what time do you get here each morning? I get about 9:15. We got to set everything up. I said, wow, every week? What? I really enjoy doing it. But we got somebody that's working in the cafe, the sound room, who saved me today, our musicians, the child's ministry, the Sunday sit down. That doesn't just happen, does it? It doesn't just clean up by itself either, does it? And the food doesn't just appear, does it? Book bag giveaway. There's so many things that you all do, and I really just kind of want to. That's one of the things I want to say. Thank you. In a small church, we got to all help, right? And we're going to grow in church, and we need everybody's help. So thank you for that. So as I wrap up, I just want to kind of remind us. This is the 1 Peter verse. Again, we showed it once earlier. I just want to remind us that we are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that we may declare the praise of him who called us out of darkness into his wonderful light. We got to remind ourselves, that's us. And like Ezra, we have platforms that we can use to do that. And if you show the slide with all 5 of the points today, so here I'm not going to go through them. You can remind yourself of them. But the number one is to me the first one's the most important. We need to be aware of our platforms and be intentional to use them. That's the big nugget here. We've got to be aware of them and be intentional to use them. And where that really got ingrained in me, when I was 30-something years old, I had a new boss, and this new boss mentored me in business and spiritually. But this was his saying: I want to use the platforms that God's given me. And he said it over and over. Tobin, how are you using your platforms to honor God? And that impacted me. And that person's here today. And I won't point him out, embarrass him, but Rick, I really appreciate it, the impact you had on my life. But what it hit me is the reason I'm preaching this message today and not another message is because of what this man said to me when I was in my early 30s. He ingrained that into me. We've got to use our platforms to honor God. And so in a way, it's what's kind of really neat as I think about it, because of what he said to me 3 decades ago, his words are coming through me today to all of us here today. So that's the platform. Anyway, so I guess let's just all be encouraged to remind ourselves we are priests. It's up to us. We have platforms, and let's all try to be intentional and aware of them. Thank you very much.